Yo. Hello, everybody. Can everybody see me? So, this is going to be like a, I guess a research stream, an information gathering stream. What's up? What's up, everybody? I've been like checked out of news and politics for like almost a year. Besides like the big stuff that you can't miss, like this Russia-Ukraine war situation. But yeah, as a result, I just kind of have no idea what's going on. So we're gonna fix that. I don't know, like politics is kind of exhausting. I'm sure a lot of you can identify with that. But I figure a good way to do it is to make some content out of it. That's a good way to encourage me to do it. So yeah, we're just gonna look at a bunch of stuff. It's gonna be a very sort of relaxed sort of thing. I was looking at this before I started the stream. And this, I don't know, this is a way that I like to start. You can news sites, this is Reuters websites, they always like to make these articles that are like everything you need to know about this situation, and it's like a good summary, but we'll start from there and then we'll branch out and see what we can learn. It's difficult to tell what is truth and what is propaganda. Absolutely. So I know the basics of it, you know, and I feel like we all understand that Vladimir Putin is like probably not a great guy. So it's easy to come up with an idea of what's going on. So, and it's good, this has links to everything. Ukrainian forces battled. Wait, can everybody see this actually? I might like make it bigger. Use my camera. Ukrainian forces battled Russian invaders on 3 sides on Thursday. So yeah, yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, Russia like officially invaded. Like they had some of their troops in these like 2 areas that were like already sympathetic to Russia, or at least backed by Russia, but yesterday Russia did like a legitimate invasion into Ukraine. Moscow mounted an assault by land, sea, and air in the biggest attack on a European state since World War II. Read more. I'll say that, look. By nightfall, a picture was starting to emerge of fierce fighting across multiple fronts. An advisor to the Ukrainian presidential office said Russian forces had captured the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. So they're like capturing locations and shit. Heavy exchanges of fire were also taking place in the regions of Sumy and Kharkiv. Probably saying that wrong. So this is like a legit war. Russian President Putin said his aim was to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine. So I don't know anything about Ukraine, really. Vlad's wild speech. I did see some of that. I think they might be up here, actually.
The People's Republic of Donbass asked Russia for help. In this regard, under Article 51, Part 7 of the Charter of the United Nations, with the approval of the Russian State Federal Council,
sorry if there's an echo,
and in accordance with the Friendship and Mutual Assistance Treaties with the Donetsk People's Republic and the Luhansk People's Republic, ratified by the Russian Parliament on February 22nd, I decided to conduct a special military operation. It aims to protect people who have been bullied and subjected to genocide by the Kiev regime for 8 years. For that, we will strive to demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine, and will bring to justice those who committed multiple bloody crimes against civilians, including Russian citizens.
Including Russian citizens. All right. There's probably an echo on that, but it probably is still fine. But if it was like too annoying, let me know, and I'll try to find a solution. That's why streamers wear headphones. All right, I guess I'll just finish all this. Seems like there's a lot of different things going on. I mean, well, let me see. Let me see if I can find the like a beginning timeline. I was looking at an article not too long ago. Yeah, here we go. I think I was looking at this one. It's not that bad of an echo. Okay, cool. That was the more recent speech. Well, let's see. What's happening? So I know a lot of you probably already know the basics of this, but for those that don't, we'll do an overview. Wait, is this even it? I want to see like something from like the very beginning. I guess it's hard to see that because Russia just started fucking shooting people, so that's what everyone wants to talk about. Okay, this is old. Okay, let's see. Why do Russia, the US, and Europe care so much about Ukraine? Both Russia and the West. So it's good to get the context. See, Ukraine is a potential buffer against each other. Russia considers Ukraine within its natural sphere of influence, which I mean it is. Most of it was for centuries part of the Russian Empire. Many Ukrainians are native Russian speakers, and the country was part of the Soviet Union until winning independence in 1991. Russia was unnerved when an uprising in 2014 replaced Ukraine's Russia-friendly president with an unequivocally Western-facing government. And yeah, okay, I remember that. Most former Soviet republics, and yeah, I guess if you guys know some things that we can look at, then let me know in the chat and we can pull it up. I don't know if I need to read all of this. To the Europe and the United States, Ukraine matters in part because they see it as a bellwether for their own influence and for Russian intentions in the rest of Europe. Ukraine is not part of the European Union or NATO, but it receives considerable financial and military support from Europe and the United States. Russia's invasion could suggest that Moscow feels empowered to raise tensions with other former Soviet republics that are now members of the Western Alliance. I mean, it just sounds like Russia is like throwing their weight around. they're like do something. Ukraine was often in the news during the Trump administration. That's true. I don't necessarily know if we need to read that. It's a little, I mean, I guess it's relevant. Didn't Russia already invade parts of Ukraine? Yeah, they were fucking around in 2014. I remember that. So there's like a group of people in Ukraine that are like Russia sympathetic and they're separatists basically. There's a great overview by Adam something. Putin thinks like a 19th century monarch. Let's not forget that Ukrainians simply want to choose to be closer to the West, so Putin had to strike preemptively before a proper alliance is established. Worth noting that Russia settled many Russian citizens among its states during the USSR era, so a large amount of the support comes from people who arguably don't represent the indigenous population. Interesting. I'm a political scientist that studies international relations, not a Ukraine expert per se, but I've lived there for several years. You live there now? Or you did live there before? The separatists make up a tiny fraction of the overall Ukrainian population. Yeah, for sure. But I think that's what Putin has been using as his thoroughfare into the rest of Ukraine, because he already had troops in those. I don't know if they're cities or towns or just. I'm not sure. I need to look that up. Yeah, this right here, donuts, and I don't know how to say it. How do you say these? So there's two rebel republics. I don't know what they mean by republic that remain unrecognized by any other state. And then this is the speech I think that we were talking about earlier, where he recognizes, God damn it, paywalls. Um, he he recognizes the. Does this even have the video in it? I don't know if this is like illegal or something, but this is how you get around paywalls, by the way. I wanted to see if they had the video. Anyway. So, yeah. Putin recognized the independence of these two separatist territories, and then the next day or like a couple days later put troops into that area, and then like the next day just declared war on Ukraine apparently. To many Ukrainians, the Russian intervention is therefore merely the latest episode of an unfinished 8-year war. And I apologize if I'm kind of all over the place. This is kind of how I this is kind of how I read news. Donetsk, 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 Est, Donetsk. Y'all are like three. Yeah, I've got like five different pronunciations. Someone says Donetsk. Donetsk. Someone says Donetsk, and someone says Donetsk. Yeah, not. I guess declare war is incorrect. He just began a war. Why is Ukraine so vulnerable? So Ukraine is not actually a NATO member, so it cannot count on the direct military support of the United States. I wonder if the United States would give them military support. Probably not. Its military, though the recipient of hundreds of millions of dollars in Western aid in recent years, is still no match for Russia's. That's what I would expect. It's also surrounded by Russian allies and proxies and by Russia itself. So yeah, Ukraine is vulnerable. I think that's easy to understand. What could the economic effects of the invasion be? Some of the world's main grain supplies are routed through the Black Sea, which borders both Russia and Ukraine, two major wheat producers. Russia supplies about a third of Europe's gas, much of which is currently shipped through Ukraine. I didn't know that. There are Russian and Ukrainian pronunciations. I've heard there's actually a lot of Russian pushback on the invasion, with even government officials sending signed letters of protest. Interesting. Maybe we'll learn a little bit about that. Okay, so this was really just the background info. So what were we looking at before? Let's look at this one. Launches an invasion. So look at the video.
The Ukrainian foreign minister this morning saying, listen, what we want now are heavy sanctions imposed by the West and the immediate removal of Russia from the SWIFT system.
We're not dealing with
they
the
got
regional
tanks and
crisis
shit.
anymore, number one, Joe. We're dealing with the global crisis now.
Blasts ringing out across the country as troops move into Ukraine from three sides. Airstrikes killing several dozen Ukrainian soldiers, according to NBC News.
Also, if there's anything that you want me to look up, let me know. If there's something you're confused about.
It fits into the broader context.
I'm just gathering
of
like the
what
basic
Russia
info
under
right
Putin
now.
has been doing at least since 2007, and you could probably go back to 2000.
Okay, CNBC, that didn't give me any information. So yeah, this is kind of what we already know. Germany and France have tried to broker peace deals between Russia and Ukraine. Although the fighting in Donbass has been punctuated by periods of ceasefire, both Ukraine and Russia have accused each other of violating the terms of the deals, and fighting has resumed. So this has just been an ongoing thing for like years and years. Wait, Russia has often denied it has backed separatists in eastern Ukraine, but has been accused of supplying military hardware to rebels in a bid to undermine Ukraine's government. Wait, so Russia doesn't even care about the separatists? They're just trying to fuck over Ukraine? People are protesting, but not much in Russia. It's very dangerous to protest here. Are you in Russia? Well, America just sent guns to a far right group. The U.S. is cautious about entering the war because they're worried China will come in clutch for Russia. Hence why China entered Taiwan airspace this morning. I vaguely heard something about China and Taiwan. I'm Russian. Putin started this war because he wants more power and control and his crazy ideas about history. He runs a huge propaganda machine, pro-Kremlin bots, both in Russian and English language. Yeah, that's what I was saying at the beginning. I think we all kind of understand that Putin is kind of like this power-hungry quasi dictator. So it's very easy to just not give him the benefit of the doubt at all. I don't know that he deserves the benefit of the doubt, but I would like to know like exactly what's going on. The sanctions against Russia are more severe than SWIFT, and SWIFT wouldn't add much. Yeah, this is the type of thing that could, like, not to be alarmist, but this is the type of thing that could escalate into a large scale war. Like it has the possibility of that if people step up. Let's hope that doesn't happen though. Um they're lying. No, they're just lying when they deny that they support the separatists. Interesting. Russia uses the separatists as a reason to perpetually threaten invasion. He has done the same with Moldova, with Transnistria. The Russians were trying to back the separatists without it looking like they were. Interesting. Okay. I actually didn't. Yeah, I guess I just assumed that they were just allies with the separatists, but they're just kind of using them as a political pawn, which makes sense. Kremlin issued more statements on Thursday morning saying Putin would decide how long the military operation would last based on its progress and aims. Nobody is talking about the occupation of Ukraine. Okay, I'm behind, or I backed up. What does Putin want? Essentially, the battle over Ukraine is a battle for influence and power. Makes sense. Ukraine's government, now under President Volodymyr Zelensky, has pivoted towards the West in recent years, aspiring to join the EU and NATO and to move away from its post-Soviet orbit of Russia. Putin, meanwhile, has decried the dissolution of the Soviet Union as a catastrophe, and over his 22-year rule in Russia, he has sought to rebuild Russia's power base and sphere of influence. So he just wants more power. I mean, more power and influence. I mean, that sounds like... Is there a reason that Ukraine can't join NATO or the EU? Is it just like bureaucracy that's preventing that, or do they not want them to? Putin says that Ukraine makes genocide on Russian people in Ukraine, but that's bullshit. Yeah, he has been claiming things like that with no evidence. Close watchers of Putin have long believed that Russia has prepared for more sanctions and that Moscow has a bigger plan in mind when it comes to Ukraine. A hypothesis apparently being proven by the latest events in Ukraine. NATO didn't want to rock the boat, but it didn't help much in the end. Oh, yeah, okay. Ukraine has border disputes. NATO won't let them join because that would just be signing up for a war. Really, this only makes sense if this is the start of something bigger, and this is all just about trying to provoke the Ukrainians and the West into some illogical counter reaction. And what I think is really going on here is that he's building the case for all-out war with Ukraine, with the Russian population. Does the Russian population support this?
Russia has invaded Ukraine. Explosions rang out in the capital Kiev and other cities on Thursday. They came after Russia's president ordered a military operation into Ukraine's east. A Reuters witness heard blasts only minutes after President Vladimir Putin spoke on live TV. There he framed Russia's move as an act of defense.
I decided to conduct a special military operation. It aims to protect people
the same
who
thing
have
we
been
already
bullied
wrote?
and subjected to genocide by the Kiev regime for 8 years. For that, we will strive to demilitarization and denazification
Yeah, it's the
of
same one.
Ukraine, and will bring to justice.
Are there Nazis in Ukraine? Is that a thing? I don't think Russians actually support Putin. Yeah, I was wondering. I mean, I was wondering about that. That's the sense I get, but I don't really know. Okay, so what was some of the stuff that y'all were saying that I should check out? I mean, at the end of the day, this doesn't seem all that complicated. It just seems like a power grab from Putin. I mean, obviously there might be more context there, but it just seems like political machinations of Vladimir Putin. Correct me if I'm wrong. And also it's, you know, it's something, it's almost like, it seems like it's something that people kind of knew was going to happen at some point, because he's been kind of messing around for years and years. Chinese news outlet accidentally posts censorship instructions on Russia-Ukraine coverage. They tweeted it out. What the hell? So they're not allowed to report things that are unfavorable to Russia or favorable to the West in Chinese news. Wow. No one really knows what Putin wants. Ukrainians don't really like the guy, so it's not obvious what he wants to do with Ukraine if its army falls. Lots of Russians don't support Putin, but there are strict protest laws making it hard to bring change by protests. Yeah, I mean, it seems like the Russian citizens really are kind of screwed here. They just kind of have to sit back and hope for the best, it seems like. Is Twitter blocked in China? I don't know. Yeah, I'm not super familiar with Yahoo News. I've seen some weird stuff on Yahoo News, but I mean, this is a real tweet. Live updates. Oh, and President Biden gave a speech today, didn't he? Should we watch that? That might be kind of boring, though. The chat's going by really fast, by the way. So if I miss a lot of stuff, I apologize. At least 13,000 people have died in fighting since then in a war fueled by U.S. weapons and neo-Nazi militias. This war did not begin tonight. Yeah, of course. Oh yeah, I wanted to read about the sanctions actually. Do they go in detail about what the sanctions are? President Joe Biden unveiled harsh new sanctions on Russia meant to punish the country for its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The thing about that is sanctions actually harm or they affect the public as well. So that kind of sucks, but you know, there's not a lot of options. It would take time for the new measures to alter his behavior. Putin is the aggressor. Putin chose this war, and now he and his country will bear the consequences. The new sanctions include export blocks on technology. Excuse me. I literally just like choked on my own saliva a little bit. So export blocks on technology. He also applied sanctions on Russian banks and corrupt billionaires and their families who are close to the Kremlin. The U.S. also went after individuals in Belarus, including the country's defense minister for that country's role in facilitating the Russian attack. Sanctions are useless against complete dictatorships. Not sure where Russia lies on that spectrum. Maybe semi-democratic. Russia should have been isolated diplomatically and economically as soon as they invaded Crimea. We made Germany end their natural gas pipeline. That will drive up energy costs for Europe and hurt Russian economy and people. Some of the sanctions are meant to try to hit oligarchs, targeting specific rich Russians and major Russian banks. But as you say, it's really hard to not hit normal people. Yeah. The sanctions are now too little too late. Our forces are not and will not be engaged in the conflicts. Our forces are not going to Europe to fight in Ukraine, but defend our NATO allies and reassure those allies in the East. He announced a new deployment of ground and air forces to NATO's eastern flank, even as he reiterate U.S. troops would not engage in direct conflict in Ukraine. Okay, so what does that mean? Where is NATO's eastern flank? And yeah, the text is maybe I should just get rid of the chat because you can't really read it, huh? I don't know if I can change the fucking. Oh no, I can change it. I thought it would be hard to change like the color of it. Actually, I don't think it is actually. Um, yeah, I can't. It doesn't let me change the fucking color. So like this restream thing. I think I'm just gonna turn the chat off. Hold on. Oh yeah, I could maybe do that. Trying to figure out the easiest way to do that on OBS. So yeah, like I use Restream and you can't customize how the text looks without giving them money. You just have to choose from their like preset their presets. But I can just probably put a background on there. I'm trying to figure out the best way to do that. Do I have to like literally just import an image? Or can I make one? Wait. I figured it out. Hold on. One sec. Just do that. And put it here. No, not there. It needs to be. Wait. God damn it. It needs to be here. No, it needs to be. Yeah. Okay, sorry. There we go. Something like that. That's kind of taking up too much space, though. Hold on. Can I, like, rotate it like that? Maybe that'll work. Kinda. All right, we'll go with that. All right, so what was that about the NATO eastern flank? I'm sure someone answered it, but I didn't see it. Um, so Biden says that we're not going to fight in Ukraine, that's what I expect. The problem is, what do we do? What are you supposed to do in this situation? Estonia, Lithuania, Poland, Slovakia, and Romania are their eastern flank. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure how close it was to Ukraine, but is it just like right up there next to Ukraine? My geography is not great. Is it in this map? Okay, so the NATO countries are over here. And there's Ukraine. I didn't know that Ukraine was that much bigger than these other countries. Okay, that's fair, I guess. Biden addressed the nation from the White House East Room, his first appearance in public since the Russian attack commenced late Wednesday. In his remarks, Biden cast Russia's invasion of its neighbor as a generational monument or generational moment that has the potential to upend global order. Putin's action betrays sinister vision for the future of the world, one where nations take what they want by force. Yeah, but what can you do to stop him? The map is a bit old. The Crimea is Russian now. They annexed it. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I just Googled and clicked the first thing that I saw. I'm convinced the reason for the messy and rapid pullout from Iraq is because Pentagon already saw Russia was getting ready to invade Ukraine. There's a live map. Let's see if we can find that. Man, these news sites have so many fucking ads on them. Jesus Christ. Okay. Ukraine is situated in Eastern Europe and shares a border with Belarus, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Moldova, Romania, and Russia. In 2014, pro-Russian separatists took control of parts of Luhansk and Donetsk in eastern Ukraine after Russian forces invaded and annexed the Crimean Peninsula. So yeah, this is the area that's controlled by the separatists. Are those cities in Ukraine? Is that what that is? I just read the title. I'm tuning in to say me neither. Yeah, I figured that a lot of people might be a little bit behind if I am. And so I'm literally just kind of researching the bare bones basics of the situation. There are people in the chat clearly that have a little bit more insight than I do, so definitely keep up with the chat to get more ideas. Obviously, at the end of the day, you want to do your own research if you really want to be informed, but we can figure some of this stuff out. This is a pivotal moment in U.S. hegemony. The EU might side with Russia for cheap gas, and China will buy it too. My only hope is that one of his friends will stab him in the back, literally. Just return home from meeting against war in Moscow and even hear everything about war. Ukraine isn't Afghanistan. Ukraine isn't like some backwood country. The Ukrainian military is capable of mounting a much more serious defense against a country like Russia than we've seen in 60 years. Yeah, I mean, how successful will that be in the long run, though? Donetsk and Luhansk. Yeah, I understand that the separatists are pro-Russian separatists. Biden will fund Ukrainian rebellion groups and then declare war on that group in 3 to 5 years when it's decided that they are a terrorist organization. Ukraine has wanted independence forever. Call any Ukrainian a Russian and they get pissed. This helped fuel nationalism, which U.S. helped those Nazi coup in 2014. On Monday, Putin recognized those regions as independent states, which we know, ordering troops there for what he claimed was a peacekeeping operation in the east of the country. Which is a bit weird. Can you do that? Can you say, hey, this part of another country is independent and we recognize it as independent? I mean, I guess you could recognize anything that you want to recognize. Just doesn't seem like something that you can really do. Fewer than 72 hours later, Putin launched a full-scale attack on Ukraine. Ukraine-controlled territory claimed. Okay, so the separatists are claiming more territory than they actually hold, and Russia sent troops there probably to help them try to control this territory. Russia is invading Ukraine from multiple directions, including flanking maneuvers and invasion routes from every direction. But the West? Over months, Russia gathered its forces in Belarus, Western Russia, and the Black Sea, a force the U.S. estimated to be over 150,000 troops, with vehicles, artillery, tanks, and field hospitals to launch a massive assault. Reported Russian troop movements. Russian occupied Crimea. I can barely tell the difference between these. Transnistria. Yes, but Russian troops are surrounding Ukraine, so the reasons are not making sense. That map's just where the front line is. Well, yeah, I guess the initial claim of Putin was that he was sending troops to help the separatists, but now we know it was just the first step in a full-on invasion. So they claim to have more territory than they actually have. On Thursday, Russian forces launched an offensive on Ukraine's capital city, Kyiv. How do you say that? Involving missile strikes seen on video reports from the area, and officials reported are advancing toward the city of Chernihiv. Ukraine's president said Thursday that Russian forces are attacking through the Chernobyl exclusion zone, a possible path toward Kyiv that risks damaging the containment in the radioactive area. By the way, Transnistria is a Russian-backed separatist area in Moldova, not Ukraine. I mean, we can agree that interventionism and wars are bad when the U.S. does it, and be not thrilled about a bald-faced annexation, right? Kiev. I think I've heard people say that. Yeah, as you can tell, I haven't watched the news in a while, so I don't even know how to pronounce anything. Videos showed thousands of cars attempting to flee the capital following explosions as people tried to evacuate the war zone. I think we did see a picture earlier or a video earlier of just like the highway just like full of cars. I wonder if do you know what they're telling the citizens of Ukraine? I know that they're like arming people, or at least didn't the president, is it the president of Ukraine or the prime minister? He was saying that that they were just arming anyone that desired to help. Yeah, now that I think about it, I remember hearing people pronounce it like that. In Ukraine, there's currently no restriction on who can buy a gun. If the Nazi thing is made up, I'd really honestly like to know. Pretty sure the coup and ruling party are Nazis. In Ukraine, president conscripted all men 18 to 60. Kiev is how they say it in Ukraine. The Associated Press reported Russian missile strikes across Ukraine hitting regions that include the nation's capital of Kiev and the country's second largest city, Kharkiv. I don't know. I just saw the IV. I just figured it might be pronounced the same. So this is I mean, not that anybody doubted this, but this is definitely a planned assault. You know, he's like striking strategic locations all over the country. It's not like he just decided last minute to just walk in and start bombing. He had this shit set up, you know? Sully Joe, thank you for the $5. I hope you do your research as you always do. Real human beings are dying, and Americans should not use this tragedy to score cheap political points. Well, I'm doing research right now, so thank you for the super chat. Yeah, the president of Ukraine is Jewish. I did know that. Yeah, I was just trying to get I was confused about what that one person was saying. I don't know if they were saying that the president was a Nazi, but I don't know. You can believe NATO should have been dismantled after the fall of the USSR and condemn wars of aggression. And yeah, obviously there's a lot of context that I just don't know because I'm not super familiar with the history of these countries. Someone suggested Adam something. Let's take a brief look. If they're like hour-long videos, I'm not gonna do it though. I'm trying to think if there's a copyright issue. As long as it's not music, I think it's fine. Just watch this.
So as I'm sure you've heard, on the 21st of February 2022, Vladimir Putin has officially recognized the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics. This is in violation of international law and the Minsk Agreement, the latter Russia insisted on upholding while accusing Ukraine of not doing so. Following this, the Russian military has entered the Donbass officially, and with that, the separatists have stopped shelling Ukrainian territory, for now at least. This is the official start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Its extent from now will depend on what Putin wants, and of course how effectively Ukrainians can resist. At the time of making this video, the 22nd of February, 12 p.m. Central European Time, the Russian army has not yet launched any major offensives and things seem to be quiet. However, this will most likely change in the near future. The immediate next step I see is the extension of the occupied territories by force, possibly to the entire Donetsk and Luhansk regions, and the decision about this will be made in the coming days, after which further invasion of Ukraine might begin. This will most likely entail shelling the Ukrainians to either force them to retreat or retaliate. If they retreat, the Russian army can just roll in and take territory, rinse and repeat until they have the entire Donbass. If the Ukrainians retaliate, that will likely be used as a casus belli, at which point the Russian invasion proper will begin. And this will likely include
Donbass is the name. Donbass is the name of the territories that the separatists are fighting for.
Attacks from the Black Sea, from Belarus and from the east. Now, all this being said, I'm convinced that this wasn't the original plan, and what we see in front of us is a rather hasty plan B by Putin. He most likely didn't actually intend a war, not originally, rather he wanted to use the threat of invasion to strong-arm NATO into making concessions, banking on the fact that peace and stability are more important for NATO than Ukraine. This, however, turned out not to be the case. The Western response was united and consistent, basically calling Putin on his bluff. At that point, Putin did not have much choice, since he's been posturing war for months. A retreat would be a major loss of face, obviously, after which Russian military threats would not be taken as seriously. So Russia had to go ahead at this point, essentially just making shit up along the way, accusing Ukraine of suddenly wanting to invade the Donbass. In service of this, some hasty false flag attempts have followed, which were bordering on ridiculous. Russians claimed Ukrainians shot
the reason where Luhansk and Donetsk are in. So oh, okay.
rockets into Russian territory. Then they said Ukrainians destroyed a Russian border checkpoint, but of course anyone with an IQ above room temperature can see the problems here. According to Russia here, once they pulled their troops to the border and threatened with defending the local Russian population, that's when the Ukrainians suddenly decide to start provoking them. A country with the world's most nuclear weapons and an army 5 times the size. Right, very cool. Then Russians aired footage of supposedly Ukrainian troops assaulting yet another Russian border checkpoint. But fortunately and conveniently for Russian media, they apparently recorded the entire thing on a GoPro or something. Right. Then separatists claimed Ukrainians blew up the car of one of their leaders as it was standing in an empty parking lot with nobody in it. Right. And then there was a claim that Ukrainians blew up a gas pipeline in the Luhansk region, also that they are shooting at the civilian electrical infrastructure, showing a picture of a single torn wire with some smoking vegetation around it. So once again, according to Russian propaganda, Ukrainians did not invade the Donbass for 8 years of conflict, but they wanted to do so now, when Russia pulled 150,000 troops to the border, threatening a full-scale invasion under the pretext of protecting Russian speakers. Alright. And the reason why all these false flags were so half-baked in my opinion is because, as I've said, this is a hasty plan B. And a solid clue to this is Putin's hour-long, disjointed, borderline unhinged rambling about Ukraine following the recognition of the separatist areas, where he proceeds to invoke ethno-nationalist justifications between incoherent historical statements. The fact of Russian invasion wasn't so clear-cut from the beginning. There was certainly some power play around the Russian government, as there are influential people within and without who aren't necessarily in favor of invasion. For example, the Russian military elite would not be too happy with the concept of losing thousands of Russian soldiers in an invasion against a supposedly fraternal country. Sanctions are also a factor, not just for the economy as a whole, but also for the Russian business elite. And while Russia has built up massive financial reserves over the years, eventually sanctions will start to bite. Not to mention, the presence of those reserves will hardly be felt by ordinary Russians. Social issues can and will lead to instability, which Putin cannot afford. So the way I see it, Putin has basically trapped himself in this situation. If they stop now, all they'll have achieved is making the separatist regions official, which they controlled anyway. But those are also economic black holes with destroyed assets and infrastructure, with most most of the population gone. And for this they get sanctioned and turned into international pariahs. Not to mention Nord Stream 2, which is now suspended indefinitely. And Putin can't really backpedal at this point. This was his Rubicon and he crossed it. Alia Jagda est, as they say. At this point, the only potentially beneficial choice for Putin is to press on and try to achieve his strategic goals within Ukraine. This includes the land bridge to Crimea, severing Ukraine from the Black Sea, and, as a worst-case scenario, annexing the entire country up to the Carpathians. But these options also present their unique problems for Russia. Ukraine is currently experiencing warmer, wet weather, meaning the ground couldn't freeze enough to allow quick passage for armored vehicles, and the north and east of the country during the thaw are practically quagmires. This negates the possibility of a blitzkrieg, meaning the defenders can better prepare and potentially do more damage to the Russian army struggling in the mud. Also, as a rule of thumb, attackers tend to lose more troops and equipment than defenders. Western-provided weaponry is also a major problem. Ukraine now has all sorts of advanced hardware which can do serious damage to Russian hardware. So even though the Russian army is larger and more powerful, the unfavorable terrain, the defender's edge, plus Western weapons risk inflicting heavy casualties on troops whose morale is not that high to begin with. This is not Crimea. It won't be a short, bloodless campaign followed by celebrations. It'll be a long, bloody conflict leaving thousands dead, waged against a fraternal people in service of the Russian elite's interests. Russian soldiers stationed in Ukraine are treated rather badly to begin with, the Moscow Times describing it as nightmare conditions. And these Russian soldiers are facing motivated defenders with high morale, hell-bent on protecting their home from invasion. This would also be Russia's first large army logistical undertaking since 1945 against a modern mechanized military, which is also a first. If they fuck up at any point, or if Ukrainians manage to sabotage their supply chains enough, things can go downhill for the Russian army rather fast. So as you can see, things aren't so straightforward for Putin as one would think. In fact, a worst-case scenario would be them taking severe losses due to unexpectedly high resistance, supply chain problems, sabotage, and so on, thus the high casualties leading to severe domestic instability back home, which then cascades into more logistical problems for the army and loss of morale, which increases losses even further, rinse and repeat until Russia simply collapses under the weight of the crisis it created. And then the fun stuff begins, such as Ukrainians taking back Crimea and the Donbass and the like. This is of course a less likely scenario, but it's likely enough to cause concern for Putin, especially now that his approval ratings are lower to begin with. So this is my informed guess about the situation. It could be that I'm wrong, but so far things seem to be lining up. For example, the Luhansk militants declared today that as far as they're concerned,
yeah, I mean, this is basically this person's like,
and of course they called on the Ukrainian army to
analysis.
So yeah. In the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll be
yeah, I mean, that's fine. I thought it was going to be more of an informative video, but it's just like this person's sort of personal opinion about what's going on and what might happen. And I think those kinds of things are useful, especially if it's someone who's in a position to have, you know, a good insight on the situation. But yeah. We can actually see if there's any news stuff.
And Russian President Vladimir Putin authorized a military operation in Ukraine overnight, again, further intensifying an invasion of the country. And we've been reporting this morning that casualties are already being reported on both sides. President Biden plans to meet with G7 leaders later today. And this morning, we're joined now by Dr. Richard English, a USC associate professor and director of Central European Studies. Dr. English, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
My pleasure.
I want to first start with these reports from Ukraine saying, you know, a lot of people overnight woke up to this news, and many of them were hearing say they didn't really think that this was going to happen. They didn't think that an invasion would actually come to fruition, and now we're already hearing about dozens that have already been cleared. What happened? What led up to this? We've been following the story for weeks now, and then all of a sudden it seemed like overnight the invasion happened. So what got us to this point?
Well, if you want the big picture, it's what you know. Putin, the Russians, have been demanding that Ukraine stand down from its attempt to join NATO, that NATO declare they would never bring in Ukraine, a solid legal guarantee. Russia has this paranoia, right, about the NATO alliance, and particularly with regard to Ukraine. So that's been brewing for months. We saw the troops building up over the winter. I guess the other part of your question is, how did it happen so suddenly? And it's kind of striking because it was all there in plain sight, and yet most specialists did not believe that Putin would actually launch this full-scale invasion. And as recently as a day ago, the Ukrainian president himself was still criticizing the U.S. for being alarmist, and he bluntly stated there will be no large-scale invasion, and here it is. So what's remarkable is that we saw it coming, and yet we couldn't quite believe Putin would do it, and now he has.
I want to ask you about, what's happening here in the U.S. We're already seeing division on people here in our country saying who's responsible. We've got a lot of lawmakers, including our own Bakersfield Congressman Kevin McCarthy, blaming President Biden for Putin's decision to invade. How much influence did America have in this invasion?
I don't think much at all. And I don't agree myself personally with the congressman's characterization. Biden has done all he can, considering the recalcitrant allies who are much softer on Russia because they're much more economically intertwined, to motivate them to, organize the sanctions. And strong diplomatic reaction that he has thus far took a lot of work. They kind of came along kicking and screaming, some of them. As for his influence over Russia, again, he did commit.
The Western analyst community
he said there will be no U.S. troops
leaning
in
heavily
Ukraine,
towards invasion for
and he had
months.
no
I don't think this
choice
pundit
otherwise,
is right.
That simply was politically impossible, and yet at the same time he's attacked for being too soft. So I don't know what more he could have done. And the thing that I'm impressed by is that against all other criticism, skepticism, and even ridicule for the drumbeat of warnings, the intelligence that the administration declassified, that was all correct. It was ignored or it was downplayed by just about everybody, including myself, because we couldn't believe, again, that Putin would do something so brutal, so massive, so unprecedented. Not for 70 years have we seen war like this. Cannot fault the Biden administration. There's not much more they could have done, short of committing
I guess just because
American
of the precedent, just because something like this has not happened in a long time, maybe that's why he's saying that no one really expected it, even though it seemed imminent.
And that would have been politically impossible and widely criticized as well.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the U.S. involvement here, because we want to make it clear the U.S. is not at war. War is has to be, of course, an official term, but we are involved in this, and so is NATO. So can you talk a little bit about
everyone
what
is
the
hesitant
US is
to call it war. I mean, what makes a war a war? Seems like war to me
at this point? And do you think it could get to the point where we actually go to war? Or do you think that's still a far ways off?
I think it's still a far ways off. What we're doing is leading
they mean
the
in the
Western
context
Alliance
of
in
the United
organizing
States?
now a crippling set of sanctions, which will be announced later today, and the European Union coordinating with them. Without the U.S. leadership, that would be much more scattered and weak. We are also, of course, organizing emergency supplies for Ukraine. We have been providing them with military aid, for months now.
Hi, everyone. Ukrainian here. Don't underestimate Ukraine. Almost 50 million people live here. We won't give up our homes, and we'll fight to the end. P.S. Don't trust Russian news. Yeah, I mean, that is a wild situation to be in if you live in that country. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what to say. I hope that works out. Okay, this dude's boring. Let's find something else. Oh, this is updates on the ground. This dude get hurt? I wonder what happened to him.
To Moscow now, and a closer look at how Russia's attacks are being received there. Today, senior international correspondent Keir Simmons joins us from there. Hey, Keir, good morning.
Hoda, good morning. President Putin made his televised announcement before 6 a.m. here in Moscow, but Russians woke up to find it playing on loop on Russian morning television and to find the value of their currency crashing. Hoda, there have been lines at banks of Russians trying to withdraw dollars from banks and people coming up to us on the street
They're
to
trying
tell
to
us
get
how
their
upset
money
they
out.
are. One man told us he supports President Putin. Many others told us they do not, including one woman who says her partner is Ukrainian and how frightened she is for him.
I don't like it, and I don't want it to be like that at all.
Do you know people in Ukraine?
Yep, I'm actually in love with one. So I don't know what to say. It's a tragedy.
I'm afraid that something will happen here, and I'm afraid of people who live in Ukraine.
You're afraid for them?
Yes.
And President Putin has cancelled his public
Well, he found
appearances.
two
Today
people
we're told that he is
that had
meeting
something
with
to say.
oligarchs as Russia faces those huge sanctions threatened by the West, Savannah. President Putin, we are told, is making the decisions with a small group around him inside the walls of the Kremlin, Savannah.
All right, Kara, thank you.
Notice a lack of damage to civilian structures. Yeah, I agree with that. It's a little crazy that we're not calling this a war. Yeah, I mean, maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe there's some kind of political definition that they're... I don't know. The reason why Putin decided to invade Ukraine is because he wants to be in the Russian history books in 10 to 15 years from now for reinstating the USSR. The U.S. hasn't declared war since 1941. Yeah, I highly doubt the U.S. is going to like directly get involved in this particular war, but you never know. I mean, I'm not like a Putin expert, but that dude is like a gangster, man. That dude might just randomly start attacking fucking NATO countries.
And as this continues to unfold, Ukrainian immigrants living right here in New York are glued to the latest developments.
Yeah, the East Village has a large Ukrainian population and is home to the popular restaurant Veselka, owned by Jason Burchard, who actually joins us this morning to share his view on how the community is holding up. Good morning, Jason. Thanks so much for being with us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So your restaurant, it's really a staple for the Ukrainian community. So what's been the reaction to the explosions that we're seeing this morning?
To be honest with you, I'm speaking with a very heavy heart this morning. This is a very emotional time for myself and for my Ukrainian staff, as well as all our supportive staff, our friends, family. It's been a long night listening and hearing of the news, as you've heard, of the invasion of that Russia has started this invasion. I was very hopeful.
What is this? An American guy that has a restaurant in Ukraine?
That the democratic diplomacy would I had faith in that, but unfortunately, I was wrong.
You know, and we can hear the emotion in your voice, and I'm sure your thoughts are really with so many of your family over there. But the explosions, we saw them play out across really the country last night, right? Are there any reports right now of damage that you are hearing about from those strikes? That we saw some of the explosions in Katie's reporting, and what have you been hearing? Have you been able to connect with any of your loved ones or family members?
I haven't connected this morning. I've spoken to some of my staff members who have spoken to family back home. They're in a state of shock. I mean, there are multiple reports of these bombings. I don't think we truly know what the extent of it is. It is, in fact, there are explosions happening, but we haven't heard the full extent of what more than you know. But we're hopeful that I don't know what to hope for at this point.
Oh, gosh.
I'm praying.
Yeah, my heart breaks for you and your staff members. So at this point, you're saying you really don't know if their homes or their families' homes have been damaged by the warfare over there right now?
What I'm understanding is that they're targeting military targets and key infrastructure or transportation, but nothing of any other sorts that I'm aware of.
Yeah, you know, we spoke to a few people earlier this week from the consulate who were talking about go bags that were necessary, and we're seeing the video of the residents trying to flee certain areas right now. What are you hearing on the ground at all in terms of what people need, and do they even have basic necessities if they're staying put and hunkering down?
I believe the basic necessities are being had. I know that some of the family members, some of the staff's family members were stocking up on some of the basic necessities leading up. But honestly, there was the sense what Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, was saying was to stay calm. And I really believe that he thought that there was going to be diplomacy to solve this dilemma. But as we see now, there's a run on banks and people are trying to escape the capital in droves. So we'll have to see how this plays out. I mean.
And even for you, how can you stay calm, really, right? When there is so much uncertainty.
Okay. This is a sad man. It's really just a power grab from what I can tell. Putin knows that no one can stop him because they still have hundreds of nukes. NATO allies can't involve themselves directly. Yeah. See, that's the issue here. And this is, I don't know, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I like almost never comment on war or like foreign conflicts and things like that because I honestly think this is probably way more complicated than anyone gives it credit for. And particularly the solutions and the correct course of action is like almost incomprehensible, and it seems like it's really hard to figure out what to do. And I'm very skeptical of anyone who thinks it's like very clear cut and think there's a clear cut answer for everything. Ukrainian here currently Russians attack military bases, mostly ignoring civilians. However, this is no peaceful operation. Yeah, I mean, people are still dying, you know. Putin's goal is to spread panic and cut off the government from its people in the capital city of Kiev, basically going back to USSR times with Russian government controlling Ukraine. As of now, his plan fails. Our troops fiercely resist each attack. Just so you know, they just captured Chernobyl, which makes this a fully international threat as well. I have yet, yeah, I don't think I've seen anyone defend Putin yet, but I mean, there's probably supporters like, I mean, there's probably Putin supporters in Russia, right? Is someone blaming the United States for what Russia did? The chat's moving by really fast, so I'm not even sure what is being talked about, but yeah, let's look up more information about Chernobyl. I mean, I don't know if it'll say anything besides, you know, the obvious. We should not equivocate on this. This action is wrong and must be condemned. Yeah, the geopolitics is complex, but that doesn't justify anything. Correct. I don't know if that's a response to me, but I'm not trying to justify anything, but I also am acknowledging that I'm not smart enough in these matters to make any like clear-cut statements. I mean, if you go back long enough, you can find different factors and probably a lot of factors that involve the United States, but at the end of the day, Putin's the one that seems to be the aggressor in this particular situation. They just straight up bombed an airport.
Here in the Ukrainian capital, we started hearing explosions at about 5 a.m. this morning. I just heard another one.
Oh, I tell you what, I just heard a big bang right here behind me. There are big explosions taking place in Kiev right now.
I can't even imagine. There's just bombs going off around you. What do you even do? You can't like run away because there's another bomb. Can you cross the border in Ukraine? Is it easy to cross the border, or is it like a whole thing? Like, can you be like, I'm out, I'm about to go to fucking Belarus or something? You probably don't want to go there either, though, do you? Ukraine made a high-speed rail system and modernized their infrastructure to improve Ukrainian citizens' lives and fight corruption, which was largely Russian. Anti-US shouldn't be anti-Ukraine. War is hell, indeed. You hide from what I understand. Get into a shelter if you can, or a basement. I know a Bosnian who hid in his bathtub. Yeah, see, I mean, you know, as we've discussed, it doesn't look like as of now that they're like attacking civilians, but still, you know, you can be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And obviously a lot of these military government places, there's still humans there. So it's not like it's not a big deal, but yeah, it's just a situation that is, I have no, you know, no perspective of what that's even like when there's just bombs going off, missiles dropping around you from all directions and shit. So people are trying to escape the country. We did see the video earlier of like all the cars on the highway, but it doesn't look like they're moving very fast. People are being led into Poland. Okay. All right, let me look at this real quick. Russian forces have seized control of the Chernobyl power plant in northern Ukraine, the site of the world's worst nuclear disaster. Troops overran the plant on the first day. So that seemed like that was like one of his main plans, was to take Chernobyl. When I came to the office today in the morning, it turned out that the management had left, so there was no one to give instructions or to defend. Wait, who is this talking? A spokesperson for the State Agency of Ukraine on Exclusion Zone Management. There are trains with refugees planned to arrive to one of the cities in Poland. Here in New Mexico, I live next to an explosive testing area, and all the houses get shaken by it on almost a daily basis. From what I heard, you get used to it and hide if you can tell it's near. Okay, well, it's good that some people are are able to leave the country. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if they were like trapped in the country or something. Like obviously it's different, but like I'm imagining if that happened in the United States, for example. Someone's calling me. It would be really hard to just leave, you know? And that's probably the case for several other countries. Earlier Thursday, Ukrainian president warned that Russian forces were attempting to wrest control of the nuclear plant. So what is the advantage of controlling the nuclear power plant? I guess it's you know, it's power for the for the country. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if there's that much to learn about that. There's huge lines of people. Okay, that's cool. So people are just trying to get where they and see my first instinct, if I understood what was going on, I would be like, I need to leave this country. I need to dip out. That would be my first thought rather than hide, but I don't know which one of those is actually more of a rational decision. Chernobyl is defunct. I thought it still they still used it for stuff. I guess not. Oh yeah, a couple of people mentioned Bo the Fifth Column. Chernobyl is probably just a strategic point because the plant is non-functional. Yes, there's another nuclear power plant that's there, completely separate from the old plant that is defunct. Ukraine's managing the wreck of Chernobyl and receiving support internationally and regionally. If Putin redraws borders, that support for the diminished neo-Ukraine, if it still exists, will be gone. Wait, so is there a plant over there that is operational? It's just not Chernobyl, or is that not correct? As far as I know, the only other nuclear power plant in the north of Ukraine is the Rivne plant. Rivne, which is not really near Chernobyl. Okay, well, never mind. It seems like Chernobyl was like his first goal. Taking Chernobyl was like the first thing that he tried to do, or not tried, but succeeded in doing. Wait, when did this come out? 29 minutes ago. 57 Ukrainians have been killed as a result of the Russian invasion. I'm honestly surprised that number is not higher. Chernobyl is still an active power plant. Y'all are giving me mixed information. Where's the Chernobyl nuclear power plant? Is it still operating? And what happened there? Why do news sites do all this shit? Like 19 things pop up. What happened to like user experience on the internet? Like no one gives a shit about that anymore. Like, God, that's so annoying. This is the Scotsman. I don't even know this publication. Is this a legit publication? I'm just interested in why Putin was so interested in taking Chernobyl. The 3 other reactors remain in use after the accident, but were eventually shut down in 2000 and are currently still in the process of being fully decommissioned. So no, the answer is no, according to the Scotsman. Okay, this is unrelated. Wait, where was I at? I got to use the restroom.
The world, and neither can your cronies. An important speech, but one that falls well short of what the most upset elements in the world opinion would want: a stronger, more robust military response.
Now, earlier we spoke to Danica Obakcoin, Professor of Post-Soviet Politics at the School of Law and Government at Dublin City University. Now, he explained why he believes sanctions won't do much to alter the course of the war.
There was a certain degree of bravado earlier this week at the Russian Security Council when Dmitry Medvedev said that they had absorbed sanctions since 2014, because, of course, the United States and the European Union have had sanctions on Russia since that time, since the annexation of Crimea. And they've absorbed them. They have a large war chest. They have a large amount of savings, and they felt they confidently proclaimed they could absorb sanctions. And of course, don't forget, these sanctions have been by and large signaled in advance. And Putin, knowing what the sanctions would be, more or less still invaded Ukraine today. So I think that sanctions are not going to in any way influence, I think, the course of the war. They might have longer-term implications, but this is a war that Russia enjoys complete military superiority, and I think it's not going to have any immediate effect.
So you really don't think that their economy, their military, their aerospace, that Russia can be degraded by these new tranche of sanctions?
No, I don't think that they'll have any influence on the situation on the ground right now. As I said, these sanctions were more or less anticipated in advance. They will have made preparations. Certainly money will have been diverted in different directions. No, I don't see it. This is now a war, and it's not going to be won by throwing money at the problem right now. It's who has troops on the ground. And one thing that was clear from Joe Biden's speech is that the United States and indeed NATO are not going to commit troops. Ukraine is militarily on its own right now, as it has always been. This has been the dilemma for Ukraine from the very beginning. It has a very powerful and determined adversary in the Kremlin, but relatively irresolute allies. And now we've reached the crunch stage. The fact that Ukraine is not in NATO, is not in the EU, is being underlined. You know, you look at neighboring.
Chernobyl is really close to the border with Belarus. It may not be any more interesting than that. I mean, maybe he could use it as a weapon. Didn't want Ukraine to, or Putin just likes making news. Oh yeah, let's look about China and Taiwan. I saw something about that. I think China's they just sent some aircraft there. I don't know if they've actually attacked. Are they gonna let me look at this? Okay, cool. And when was this? Last updated 3 hours ago. Okay, hold on. Okay. Taiwan's Air Force scrambled again on Thursday to warn away 9 Chinese aircraft that entered its air defense zone, Taiwan's defense ministry said, on the same day that Russia invaded Ukraine, a crisis being watched closely in Taipei. Taiwan, which China claims as its own territory, has complained of regular such missions by the Chinese Air Force over the last 2 years, though the aircraft do not get close to Taiwan itself. So China just does this all the time. Taiwan has U.S. there teaching their military stuff. Chernobyl is just a red herring that happens to be on the wrong road. The media loves a dramatic story. Yeah, I guess it might just be a media thing. Now that I'm thinking about it, the media just knows that the word Chernobyl kind of triggers people, so they made it like their big story. Taiwan's air defense zone extends to mainland China. Seeing Chinese aircraft there means nothing. Yeah, this might be another just media exaggeration, because it looks like China does this all the time. Yeah, while Taipei has not reported any unusual movements by Chinese forces, the government has increased its alert level. Yeah, is this even a thing? Does Taiwan itself acknowledge itself as part of China? I'm so ignorant of foreign politics. I apologize. Like, all these say that China claims Taiwan as its own territory. They're saying it as if Taiwan itself does not acknowledge that claim, or as if the rest of the world doesn't acknowledge that claim. This doesn't seem like it's actually a thing. But yeah, I mean, that's why this is why you got to read a bunch of shit. Like, I strongly not oppose, but like, some people get all their news from like the same source. And I think that's a mistake, because you're only subject to their version of the news, you know? And a lot of it, especially in this day and age, a lot of it is just designed to get as many clicks as possible as soon as possible. So a lot of it is just non-stories, like what this appears to be. It's certainly a thing, just not necessarily related to the Ukraine, and it's not relevant right now. The implications for the Taiwan Strait will be worked out later. Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to say it's like unimportant, but just unrelated to this particular thing, and not all that unusual to begin with. Taiwan operates as an independent country. China pretends they allow it, and it's officially theirs. China see Taiwan as a part of China. Official U.S. policy does not recognize Taiwan, but we do provide them with weapon support, etc. Okay. Let's look at one of Bo's videos.
Well, howdy.
Let's see which one of these looks. What happened in Ukraine last night? Let's talk about. Oh, he puts out a lot of videos. Holy moly. It's like 4 videos in the last 24 hours. Okay. Let's talk about Ukraine and Russia's economy. Let's talk about NATO. Why NATO doesn't want to use troops. Let's just watch this one.
Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So today, we are going to talk about why NATO is looking for non-kinetic options. Why they're looking for options other than putting in troops. For a lot of people, this is confusing. And this is especially true if you're one of those people who may understand the numbers and comparative capabilities of the militaries, but you don't understand doctrine when it comes to what countries are willing to do. If you understand the numbers, you're looking at this and you're trying to figure it out, right? Because it doesn't really make sense. When this mythical fight takes place online and people sandbox it and talk about it, it's the United States versus Russia. If you're familiar with the comparative capabilities, the United States wins. You know, it's that old joke. The world's largest air force is the United States Air Force. The world's second largest air force is the United States Navy. And that's true, by the way. It's a joke, but it's also accurate. So why isn't that option being exercised? Especially considering when you're talking about Europe, all of NATO's involved. All of those other militaries are in the fight as well. NATO would, in fact, stomp Russia into the ground pretty quickly. It would be bad. There would be a lot of lost pretty quickly. But Russia would be pushed out of Ukraine.
Kind of interesting to see there's an overlap between Bo and T1J audience. Is that surprising to you? That's not surprising to me.
Absent really bizarre fog of war stuff. So why don't they do it? Because this isn't the type of country the U.S. normally fights. This is a near peer. They can push them out of Ukraine, but once they hit that border, they hit a roadblock. And it's not Russian winter. It's not the Russian people's historical willingness to put it all on the line. When we talked about the worst case scenarios, when we talk about nukes, when do they really come on the table? When one nation is worried about actually losing control. The United States and NATO cannot militarily depose Putin without running the risk of nuclear war. That's why. That's why they're reluctant to do that.
Yeah, that's
they can go in and push them out. It would be bad, but they'd be able to do it. But then nothing changes. Nothing changes because they won't, if they're smart, they won't actually move further. Because
that's like
then the risks
big issue here. Like, what are you even supposed to do with a guy like Putin?
So this is why they're looking towards sanctions. Now, people have asked about that and how are they going to do it? And this is where you get to look at some foreign policy stuff. Things that may not really make sense when you're looking at it through the lens of right and wrong, good and evil, moral and immoral. Right now, oil's up to $100 a barrel? Biden's calling Saudi Arabia. Biden is calling Saudi Arabia. In fact, we know, I think he reached out last week and tried to get ahead of this. The Saudis were unwilling to do so at that time. Situation might have changed, so he's probably calling them again. Now, this explains why the United States has kind of looked the other way, slid them a card every once in a while.
No. Bo is making a big mistake here. Russian doctrine includes the use of tactical nuclear weapons. This is something people keep missing. I haven't listened to a recorded video at less than ×2 speed in so long.
At that international poker
game. I mean, you got to with these like 2-hour-long video essays.
This option in reserve. Tensions have run high between the two countries, relatively speaking, recently, so we don't actually know that they're going to go forward with it. However, generally speaking, you can trust Saudi Arabia to do what's best for Saudi Arabia. And right now, they can offload oil at, I don't know, roughly 30% more than they normally would. Now, this is also another moment to learn another thing about foreign policy. When you talk about countries looking to obtain strategic arms, you know, the way it gets sold is always, well, if they get that, you know, one madman.
I didn't realize Bo had almost 700.
You know, they could just go to town and they could launch. With this in mind, knowing that strategic arms really does stop the ability of a larger power to politically realign your country. Perhaps the way that topic gets framed to the world at large is a little different. Maybe one of the real reasons is if a country gets this power, they kind of are guaranteed a pass because nobody wants to risk it. So countries that are on the U.S. hit list.
Nice. I didn't know you could YouTube live chat with Twitch. I just realized you were live here. Yeah, you can do both at the same time. I saw a comment. This Russia-Ukraine stuff is going on since decades. I don't know how the U.S. are not vaguely aware of this. I think a lot of people are aware of it. I am just particularly politically ignorant recently. But I do remember or I vaguely remember the situation that was happening in 2014.
You know, countries that are oppositional to the United States, all of a sudden it starts to make sense why they're looking for this capability, all right? Because if they get it, they know the U.S., well, they have that roadblock at the border because they're not going to want to risk it. From the other side, when you're talking about foreign policy and you're the United States or you're Russia or China, if you're any major world power, you want the ability to politically realign other nations as you see fit. Because foreign policy isn't about right and wrong. It's about power. Those strategic arms, they truly shift that balance.
I think anyone
they make it to where the game can only go so far.
To the news probably
that poker game for a while. Stops before any player goes bust if they have nuclear weapons. That's why. Now, in a video that's already been recorded but keeps getting pushed back.
Thank you for doing this.
We talk a little bit about cyber capabilities. That is also something that Russia's really good at. They used it during Ukraine. They're really good at that. And a direct military confrontation between NATO and Russia, they would let loose. They would try everything that they could think of. So there would be disruptions at home for the civilian populace of NATO. There's a likelihood that that's going to happen anyway because of the sanctions to some degree. But in conflict, it would be all out. So if you're wondering why NATO isn't just going in and cleaning house, especially if you really understand the capabilities of NATO, all of NATO versus Russia, this is your answer. They can only go so far. They can't depose Putin militarily. The best they can do is create the conditions in hopes that the Russian people or his political allies depose him from within. The possibility of the U.S. doing it through regime change and the way the U.S. typically does it, not so much. Not something that is really likely. So that should answer that question. There's too much at stake. It can only go so far. It doesn't actually create change on the geopolitical scene. It just gets them out of Ukraine. And that doesn't actually solve the problem, because Russia could attempt to come back in as soon as NATO withdraws.
Happy Clappy, thank you for becoming a homie. Thanks for the support.
And it would be costly. This is why. It's not as simple as dealing with a power that doesn't have strategic arms. Anyway, it's just a thought. Go ahead.
So yeah, so I mean, could the NATO members that are near Russia, do they even have the capability of taking out Putin? Is that even possible? I mean, I guess that's basically the gist of his video, but did anybody even suggest that as being a possibility? Like, I mean, with the help of the United States, yeah. And other countries like that, but especially like other like nuclear armed countries, but like, did anybody even, was that even like a take that people had, is that NATO should step in and fuck up Putin? I guess he just made this video for people, for like individuals that were maybe wondering why that's not an option. But I don't know, that doesn't even seem like remotely possible. By the way, if you're not familiar with Beau the Fifth Column, I highly recommend this channel. Pretty smart person. The problem is that NATO countries can only attack on self-defense. As long as Putin stays in Ukraine, there's not a lot NATO can do. Right. So yeah, and I guess that's what he was saying. Well, he was saying the best that they can do is try to set the situation such that the people of Russia, or maybe like someone earlier was saying that they hope that one of Putin's, someone in Putin's government stabs him in the back. But maybe he's talking about like a literal like citizen uprising against Putin, which seems unlikely, but also just seems like maybe not smart. Or Putin's international allies turn against him for some reason, which I guess, I mean, who are Putin's allies? China? Is there anyone else? He's saying that the U.S. won't enter Ukraine because they know they can't enter Russia. So the best they can hope for is Putin to reinvade later anyways. I can't emphasize enough that war has changed. We've seen a preview of this in the Armenian-Azerbaijan war. One side had drones. But yeah, you guys can check out, I don't want to just sit here and play all his videos, because at that point I'm just taking views from him. So he's made a few videos about this situation. Y'all can go check that out. If y'all enjoyed that one or thought it was interesting. But I don't want to just like take all, I don't want to give him his views. That's all I'm saying. Iran and Syria. China is right now more of a neutral party. Yeah, it's either a civil uprising or Russian oligarchs that take power. And how likely are either of those things? And you know, also from Putin's standpoint, it would be, you know, another possible option is that Putin just decides one day that it's not worth it and he stops this operation. But that also seems, that's probably the least likely of all these things because he's kind of like in so deep at this point. Putin is weaker than he looks. He's not as popular as he was. And if the economy tanks and he gets Russia into an unresolvable war, then who knows? Not going to say it won't happen. Is North Korea a Russian ally? Yes, many post-Soviet states in Central Asia are partners with him. I did not know that. He meant that if NATO decided to expel Russia militarily, they could, but it doesn't remove Putin. Is that right? I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by remove Putin. Like, if the United States wanted to, they could just run up in there and assassinate the motherfucker. I'm pretty sure they could do that pretty easily, but that's probably not the most politically expedient thing to do. Russia and China are competitors, not allies. Belarus is a Russian ally. China is actually in a very awkward position right now. See, I think that's why everyone was bringing up the China and Taiwan thing. Because they were like, oh, you know, maybe China and Russia are planning something together, or maybe one of them is like using the other's actions as a opportune time to do something. China isn't really a Russian ally. They are more ambivalent and anti-US. Best outcome of this is, yeah, there's a coup that removes Putin. Ultimately, he is bad for Russian interests, I think. He used to operate a bit more sensibly, but recently has kind of gone off on one. The problem is the decades of propaganda the Russian people have been fed. Therefore, it's hard to question his authority. Like, I'm not super familiar with Russia, and like, y'all can stop me if I'm saying something like super dumb, but whenever you see Russian people or, you know, hear about Russian people, they don't seem like this sort of brainwashed community, you know? You know, everyone talks about Russian propaganda, and I'm sure it's a thing, you know, I'm not saying it's not a thing. But, you know, Russian people still seem like, you know, rational folks. When compared to like North Korea, for example, whenever you see that shit, it just looks like a bunch of like brainwashed people. Or at least people that are like so scared of being individuals that they act like they're brainwashed. Morgan Allen, thank you for the 10 euros. I'd recommend checking out Peter Zehan's analysis on the topic. He's good at capturing the larger geostrategic picture. Is that a YouTube person? Where did they talk about this? The U.S. could not assassinate Putin. Man is a hardcore KGB agent and is loved by the agency. It'd be insanely hard. Maybe so. I think I would qualify Russians generally as cynical, definitely not brainwashed at all. You're watching Western media. Okay. I mean, from what I understand, Russians are just smart enough to not get on Putin's bad side. Anti-war protests sparked in Russia because of this invasion. There were a lot of protesters thrown in jail. Russians are normal people with very bad information. A good proxy of their skepticism is their super low COVID vaccination rate. They're brainwashed in the sense that they don't know what's happening. They aren't brainwashed into believing something, but believing nothing / no one. You linked to a video on the topic? I don't even know if links go through on YouTube. I feel like YouTube blocks all links. Ukrainian territory is currently occupied by Russian forces. This is Twitter though, so you gotta be careful. He says it broadly matches what I've been seeing though. I mean, so at this moment, or at least Putin has not officially said that he intends to occupy Ukraine, right? He claims he's just trying to like denazify the area, as he said. Am I right to say that? Like he's not trying to take over the country, or at least he hasn't said that's what he's trying to do. Brave Russian citizens protesting, much respect. Is it just me, or is it crazy that we're all watching a war happen live? I mean, this is definitely, I mean, the fact that this is all over the news, this is the biggest story. This is definitely a big deal for sure. You know, we just watched a video of a missile hitting an airport. Like you could literally see the actual missile on camera. Like I don't know that I've ever seen that before, like as it was happening, you know? Putin says denazification, that means regime change. So is Putin accusing the Ukrainian government of being Nazis? He's definitely trying to take over the whole country at this point. Well, it's that time. Gotta head to work. Be safe in that snow. Yeah, which is nonsense since they're Jewish. Did I read this already? Because I did want to know what the point, like what the expectations for the sanctions are. Oh, yeah, I haven't looked at this yet. But of course, Putin, Putin knew that this was going to happen, so it's hard to imagine that this will change anything. Okay, here's a look at the unveiled sanctions and who they will target. Cut off Russia's largest financial institution. How do you say that? Sberbank, and 25 of its subsidiaries from the U.S. financial system. Okay, cut off Russia's largest financial institution from the U.S. Okay. It holds nearly 1/3 of the overall Russian banking sector assets. Full blocking sanctions on VTB Bank, Russia's second largest bank, and 20 of its subsidiaries. Full blocking sanctions. I don't know what full blocking sanctions means. Full blocking sanctions on 3 other large Russia banks. Any Russians or Ukrainians? There were actually a couple of Russians and Ukrainians in the chat. I don't know if they're still here though. Everything Putin says is BS or just reversing the narrative to claim that Russia is the victim. That seems to be the general consensus pretty much across the board, is that, you know, Putin is just kind of full of shit. And he's just making up shit to justify his actions, which, you know, is kind of what what politicians and military leaders do in general. So not saying that that justifies it or makes it any better, but hi from Ukraine. To say I'm panicked is to say nothing. Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine feeling hopeless. I truly can't imagine. Like we literally just watched, you know, videos of people looking at bombs going off from out their windows and stuff. Be safe. I really don't know what to tell you on that one. Yeah, it is very similar to the U.S. justifications for invading Iraq. The real point is, does the fact Putin is lying even matter? Like, Biden called out the exact plan they were going to do, and then they did it anyways. What can anyone do to that? Yeah, that's kind of the issues when you're dealing with someone. So here's the thing with Putin, or here's my question about Putin. Is Putin just like this sort of like maniacal supervillain that, you know, that thinks he's untouchable and thinks he's invincible? Or is he a, you know, a intelligent, strategic military leader that pretends, or that puts on this act? Because if he's the former, then we just have to look for him to make a mistake because of his hubris. But if he's the latter, you know, that's what's going to be hard to deal with. No, he's well aware of how he might be touchable. Yeah, that's what I'm curious about. Like, is he how conscious and how much does he acknowledge where he's weak and where he's vulnerable? So cut off 13 major state-owned companies from raising money from the U.S. market. Sanctions on Russian elites and family members. That's what people were talking about earlier. we're targeting like specific Russian elites. Sanctions on 24 Belarusian people and companies. This includes 2 significant Belarusian state-owned banks. Sanctions on the Russian military. This is very general. Like, do sanctions work? I don't know a lot about that. And if they do work, would they work on Putin? I don't think he's stupid, but he's also a borderline sociopath. Putin subscribes to political realism, the theory that conflict is the natural state between nations, so you should initiate conflict when it's most advantageous to you. I don't know what to think about Putin. He certainly has no concern for either being truthful or actually being seen as truthful. He pretty much knows he can get away with doing this in the long run. Hi there from Poland. What's up? Are you seeing anything in Poland? I've heard that there's like thousands of people like traveling into Poland at this point. Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of people in the chat here are just a little bit more informed than me, so I'm just getting different ideas of what people think. You just described madman theory, intentionally blurring the line between appearing crazy and actually being truly crazy so that people can't predict / solve your game theory. Vanaloven, thank you for the $4.99. I recommend something from Michael Kaufman at the Center for Naval Analysis. He's been on the nose even compared to other scholars in the past months. Michael Kaufman. Morgan Allen, thank you for the €5. I'm gonna bow out. Now, but if you search for Peter Zehan Russian Grab on YouTube, he explains what Russia's been doing for the past 10 years. Okay, maybe we'll look at that. This seems long. Okay. Oh, okay, this is a paywall. Well, let's see. I mean, if it's super long, I don't want to. Do I want to read? Do I want to? I'm kind of more interested in stuff that with the context knowing of what just happened. But I'm probably well, never mind. Is there like an interview or something?
Joining us is Michael Kaufman. He's with the Center for Naval Analyses. He's their Russia Studies Research Program Director here to talk about Russia-Ukraine tensions. Mr.
Well, I mean, this is kind of like, so yeah, everyone was talking about this a couple weeks ago, and everyone was like, is Russia gonna invade? And it seemed like a lot of people did not expect them to just straight out launch a full-scale invasion, but yeah, we watched one of Adam Something's videos earlier. I don't want to just straight up, watch every video on someone's channel because it's kind of just taking views away from them. But I don't know that much about Adam Something, but a lot of people have recommended Adam Something. So that's something that y'all can check out if you like. That they've covered a lot of this stuff on there. I think sanctions are more meant to incite protests from the Russian populace because they will be the most affected, and no one likes a recession. I didn't think about it that way actually, because one of the problems with sanctions is they can really affect normal people, is the general public. But if that's the intention, to stir unrest, but the problem is, does that stir unrest against Putin, or does that stir unrest against the United States? For right now, I think right now I'm just kind of looking for information about the invasion. We did look at some of the background information for it earlier. BM-30 Smerch. I don't even know what that is. Is that like a missile? Oh, it's a rocket launcher. I honestly expected a much more limited attack, invade the breakaway republics, and under the cover of that, take control of the North Crimean canal. Crimea. Is it Crimean or Crimean? Or is it Crimean or is it Crimean? Both probably. So you're saying that it would be unrest against both Putin and the United States? For Russia, they should be targeted to make wealth stored outside of Russia no longer safe. A reasonable person would at least recognize these sanctions as basically justified. I think, yeah, the problem is there's not that many ways to attack or like punish another country, like another sovereign country, outside of like a violent military attack. There's not that many ways to do that, and sanctions are like one of the biggest ways that you do that, if you're in the position to do that, you know. Putin doesn't have much time left. Maybe he wants to go out in a blaze of glory in a blaze of glory. What do you mean he doesn't have much time left? Are you saying he's old, or are you saying that his regime is on its last legs? There's a sad elements of sanctions where they're basically all that you can do. Yeah, this is why I think part of this is why I don't like foreign conflicts, because I don't know what's supposed to happen. Or not even just foreign conflicts, but just international conflicts in general, because I'm trying to find like someone saying, hey, this is what we should do that will fix the problem. I mean, obviously nothing is that simple, but it's like, it's not even like fixing the problem. It's like, here's what we should do. This is what we do in this situation. There's no answer to that question. Isn't he like 70? I mean, probably. But I mean, Putin's 69 years old. I would say nice, but it's Putin. There's no fixing a madman with an ancient axe to grind. There are a couple of options, but everyone has a negative side to it. Yeah, I mean, sanctions are kind of the main thing that we can do, at least. And of course, this just happened. Well, the invasion just happened. This conflict was going on for a while, but I'm interested to see like how this is going to update over time. And there's like new videos keep coming out every few minutes, but I don't know if there's any new information.
The initial phase of a full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia's military is underway. Thanks for joining us. I'm Cheryl Miller, along with Julie Bragg and Candace Burns. President Biden has announced tough new sanctions against Russia in response to that attack. CBS 6's Bill Fitzgerald has been monitoring the situation overseas and joins us now with the very latest. Bill?
Cheryl, the invasion began last night. That is early morning Ukraine time. And since then, Russian...
Several years ago, my wife and I had a very passionate debate about whether sanctions are ethical. Jury is out. Also still... Fucking the chat move. Also still out on borders in general. Borders in general, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not. This is definitely not my area
even
of
further into
expertise
Ukraine. Take a look. This is some new video we're seeing out of Ukraine.
Or anything like
it
that.
follows the bombing of an apartment building. From the outside, you see parts of the structure have been destroyed, balconies in pieces. This video from inside one of the homes also shows more damage. You see civilians caught in the crossfire, glass shattered all over the floor, what looks like wires hanging down from outside windows.
Wait, so what apartment building was this? I thought they were only bombing military and government buildings. Was this a government-owned apartment building? It's the same thing I was just looking at. What was it? They're bombing civilian compounds? Yeah, many people have suggested Adam something. We watched one of his videos earlier. I was under the impression that they were only attacking military and government locations. I guess that's wrong.
Part of Ukraine, people took shelter from bombing in the train stations. They're not waiting for trains, they're sheltering there. The Pentagon says Russia fired roughly 100 missiles in this initial phase of the attack, targeting Ukraine's military infrastructure and the highly populated residential areas. That's a problem for all those folks.
They will go all over the place, even if you're aiming for military areas. Shockwaves probably broke the grass. Okay. They also attacked a hospital. I know they attacked an airport. I'm not saying they're trying to avoid killing people. That's clearly not the thing, because a lot of the places they're targeting there's clearly people around. But I thought they were specifically targeting government owned locations. But I guess, as you guys are saying, the shockwaves and the side effects or whatever. I thought that they were saying that they directly bombed this apartment building. But maybe that's not what happened.
Targeting Ukraine's military infrastructure and the highly populated residential areas. That's a problem for all those folks. Since then, Russia has taken control of the Chernobyl nuclear
I was just confused for a second. I thought that they were saying that they targeted an apartment building.
Plant. That is according to Ukrainian officials. After meetings with his national security team and other G7 world leaders, President Biden unveiled what he describes as unprecedented sanctions against Russia.
We've now sanctioned Russian banks that together hold around $1 trillion in assets. We've cut off Russia's largest bank, a bank that holds more than 1/3 of Russia's banking assets by itself, cut it off from the U.S. financial system. And today, we're also blocking 4 more major banks. That means every asset they have in America will be frozen.
Meanwhile, NATO says it will activate defense plans to protect its eastern flank. A group of American F-35s has been deployed from Germany to the Baltic region in support. President Biden says he will not send American forces into Ukraine, though the U.S. has sent lethal aid. Ukrainian officials say they will fight to defend their homeland, and they do not expect anyone else to fight alongside them, but they do want support. U.S. forces in Poland have set up camps to receive refugees from Ukraine. Candace?
Thanks, Bill. And we're hearing from some people who live in Central Virginia who are from Ukraine, and they still have family in their home country. Our Brendan King spoke with the man living in Chesterfield. Brendan tells us what he's saying about the events that he's seeing unfold overseas.
Right now, several Ukrainian.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I guess at this point, the way that you would research this is just to look more into the history surrounding the region and the countries involved, and trying to get further context. Because as far as like what's actually happening, doesn't seem that complicated. Just seems like Putin gonna Putin at this point. I mean, it's a little bit unprecedented because nothing like this has happened in a long time. But it appears to be just a power grab on Putin's part, and almost like he's daring the rest of the world to do something about it. I think a lot of the context are previous elections in Ukraine. I mean, we can look a little bit about some of that stuff. We did read a little bit about it earlier. What is Putin's end game? Does anybody know the answer to that, really? Yeah, I think we were looking at this article earlier, but we can briefly overview it. I think a different article, actually. Heightened fears of a military conflict between Russia and Ukraine have been present for some time, and eastern Ukraine has been the location of a proxy war between the two countries. Did we read this earlier? I think we did. Anyway, I'll read it again. Soon after Russia's annexation of Crimea from Ukraine in 2014, pro-Russian separatists proclaimed two republics in the eastern part of the country. Oh yeah, I didn't see when you guys told me how to pronounce that. So yeah, this is what we know. Pro-Russian separatists proclaim two republics and then by proclaim, that means that they literally took over that part of the country, right? Oh, there's just been fighting. Since then, there have been ongoing skirmishes and fighting in the region, which is known as the Donbass, between Ukraine's troops and separatists. Germany and France have tried to broker peace deals between Russia and Ukraine, known as the Minsk agreements. And although the fighting in the Donbass has been punctuated by periods of ceasefire, both Ukraine and Russia have accused each other of violating the terms of the deals, and fighting has resumed. Do we need to know what the Minsk agreements are? It might be interesting to read more about that, but I don't think I'm going to right now. Going to protest right now. Keep up good work. All right, be safe. Puppeting Ukraine is his dream. Belarus too. He knows the West has zero appetite for war or world policing right now. He's done a good job making sure that we stay at each other's necks, fighting on social media and deepening political division. It would be very helpful to read through them. The armed conflict in the Donbass, often described as war in quotation marks, has, I mean, what makes a war a war? Has already had a high human cost. Wait, so 13,000 people. Okay, yeah, we knew that. 13,000 people have died in the Donbass since 2014. That's wild. I mean, I guess it's not wild, but that's a lot of people. Putin told reporters that the Minsk agreements were dead long before yesterday's recognition of the People's Republics. Okay, we did read this earlier. So CNBC says essentially the battle over Ukraine is a battle for influence and power, which is kind of what, I mean, seems like that's what it boils down to. But yeah, we did read this article earlier. I forgot. Maybe we can find an overview of the Minsk agreements. Minsk? Is that what it was? The Minsk Protocol. So Wikipedia is not afraid to call it a war. It says the Minsk agreements were a series of international agreements which sought to end the war in the Donbass. The agreement failed to stop the fighting and was thus followed with a revised and updated agreement, Minsk II. This is a little bit of a tangent. I don't think this is that important since it doesn't seem like anybody is following any of these things, but it's interesting. You could probably skim the agreements for the context with this invasion makes them irrelevant moving forward. Yeah. Why would Ukraine willingly violate the Minsk agreement? They have zero benefit from it. So yeah, I'm probably not going to go over all of this, but I was just interested. I mean, it just seems like pretty standard stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's like kind of irrelevant at this point because Putin basically said the Minsk agreement is dead. Not basically, I mean, he literally said that. So yeah, I mean, at this point, I think it would just take more in-depth research, more than I really feel like doing on stream. I would have to like sit down and read some long stuff or watch some longer videos. I wouldn't get too hung up on calling something a war. It usually tells you more about the perspective of the person using or refusing to use the term. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it matters that much. I think what you call something matters to an extent, though. Especially in terms of public support and how public reaction. Like, I feel like even if you say, like, if you tell the average person, yo, there's an armed conflict in the Ukraine right now, they might be like, oh man, that's terrible. But if you tell them there's a war in the Ukraine right now, to me, that solicits a completely different reaction. That, to me, that solicits, oh, this is like a really, really big deal that we need to like think about and figure out immediately. Like, there's armed conflicts like fucking in the hood every day, you know? But a war, I don't know, it's a little different. Michael Kaufman, drivers of Russian strategy talk. Yeah, so this is for further research. I think this is like what you would want to look at, stuff like this, maybe.
Beyond a sort of strategy of essentially, to the extent it can, reintegrating the former Soviet space economically and politically around itself, there's always a big problem, which is leaders, capitals, they come up with strategies and visions for where they want to be. But a lot of time they spend their affairs responding to crises and affairs and events that take place that aren't planned for. And there is a sort of much larger driver of Russian behavior, a centrifugal force, if you will.
Yeah, I can't sit and watch this whole thing though. I'm probably not gonna end the stream in a little bit. I just wanted to like get on and try to figure out the basics of this. Like I said, I think a lot of you are more informed on this than I am, but I pretty much had no idea what was going on. So I wanted to like, I was just going to like wake up and just kind of start reading the news and stuff, but I thought it might be cool to stream it. Because I think a lot of viewers might want more of a basic overview as well. And I think it's cool. I think it's better to have a kind of basically have a discussion about it, get more perspectives, people from the chat. And I was also I considered the fact that there might be chatters who are actually in Russia and Ukraine who could give a little bit of insight. And we actually did get a few comments. That was pretty cool. And also it's just content, you know. I can't lie. It's nice to have some content. But yeah, I'll probably do more stuff like this. And honestly, as this story develops, I might do more streams. So we can look forward to that as well. But yeah, honestly, this is probably a good way for me to keep up with the news, because I said this earlier. I don't know how many of y'all were here, but I've been like completely burned out on politics for the past like year, maybe even more. Like I barely like read the news or watch the news anymore. I don't watch political YouTube that much anymore. It's just exhausting and makes me sad. But I think doing it on stream with you guys and having conversations it makes it a little more interesting and less depressing if I do it that way. So that might be a good way for me to just keep up with these stories. It's just, you know, make it a discussion with the audience. So if you're into that, you can check out streams going forward. And, you know, like I said, especially when it comes to foreign policy, this is not my area of expertise at all. I'm like really bad at foreign politics. I really don't claim to have any knowledge about like military strategy and things of that nature. So it's mostly a learning experience for me. And, you know, for those that were here the whole time, you could tell half the time I was just asking questions rather than, you know, giving information, you know. And I know, you know, maybe going forward I can come up with a more structured way of doing this. At this point I was really just going back and forth reading articles and watching videos and stuff, but that's kind of how I do it normally with myself, just to get the basics of it. But, you know, obviously there's stuff like this you can read, and like longer articles that you can read. But, you know, I think it's important to be informed. I think it's important to know what's going on in the world. And I was inspired this time because this is like a really big deal. And I didn't want to be the only person on planet Earth who didn't know what was going on. I mean, obviously, you know, a lot of people came in the chat and said that they were kind of uninformed as well. But this just seemed like something I needed to try to understand at least the basics of, because this is a really big deal. The important aspect is that the EU has a lot more involvement in this conflict than the US. I also got, you know, like way more viewers in this stream than I normally do. So, and that makes sense, because I think a lot of people who follow this channel follow because they're interested in politics. And also, I think a lot of people, this is just a big story, and a lot of people are interested in seeing what people are saying about it. And a lot of other people are streaming about this right now. I think, you know, people like Destiny and Hassan are streaming right now. So it's not like this is some brilliant idea that I came up with, but, you know. Anyway, yeah, I'm gonna close out the stream here in about 5 minutes. Thanks for hanging out with me for a little bit. Hopefully if anyone was a little underinformed as I was, hopefully you got a decent overview. And it's not that complicated. I think what's complex is the background and the history surrounding the situation. But ultimately, it just seems to be that Vladimir Putin is going ham. That's kind of basically what's happening. And that's not that hard to understand. But the complex part is how all this came to be, which has been happening for many, many years. And that would take a large amount of research to really fully understand all that, which, I'll try to do that over time because I fully don't understand it myself. And also what's complex is what do we do about it? That's the part that has a very complex answer that I certainly don't know. Yeah, we actually watched Bo the Fifth Column, one of their videos earlier. Yeah, I'm not specifically recommending that you watch people like Destiny or Hassan. I mean, feel free to if that's on you. I'm just saying those are people who do this sort of thing all the time. Because like earlier, someone was like, "Hey, this was a great idea for you to do this." I just wanted to point out that I didn't come up with the idea of doing stuff like this. Any chance you do a stream like this or share your thoughts on Canada's trucker convoy and the vaccine mandates it was protesting? I mean, possibly. This was a pretty. I enjoyed this stream. It was a pretty successful stream, so I will be looking into doing more streams like it in the future for sure. And especially if that's something that a lot of people are interested in. So yeah, I'll look into it for sure. Yeah, I mean, this is. I'll probably start collecting thoughts on what we should cover in future streams, and I might stream more. If I have, if I have more stuff to talk about, more stuff to look into. The only borderline issue with this is potential copyright issues for showing other videos and stuff on stream. I don't think it's that. I think the main problem is with music, as long as there's not copyrighted music. But we'll see how that works going forward. You're much calmer than Hassan and so much nicer to watch. Well, everyone has their own thing. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I haven't done too many streams like this before, because I was like, well, there's a lot of people that do this. I don't know if people have a choice between watching me or watching Hassan, why would they choose me? But the reason is because I'm a different person. I have my own personality and own thoughts. So, so I don't know. Like I said, this was this stream went well, and that's a good sign going forward. And maybe the future streams will be longer. But we'll see. I'm not really I'm not a streamer. I enjoy streaming. I love interacting with the audience. It's very fun to me. But I can't stream all day like the pro streamers do. Like they stream for 8 to 10 hours a day. I just do not have the capacity to do that. Hopefully that's okay with y'all. Like I've been streaming for about 3 hours now, and that's I'm like pushing the limit at this point. But also streaming is not my job really. it's related to my job, but it's not my job, so I don't feel as beholden to do it for that long, you know? Destiny's literally playing League of Legends right now. That's funny. He was definitely covering this earlier though. When it's your personality that attracts your audience, you can have a broad range of topics and still pull your audience. Well, I mean that's true to an extent. But like for example, this stream today, I think is the most watched stream I've ever had. And it may just be because this is such a big story. But I think it's a little bit more than just my personality that brought people here. Yeah, I really doubt I'm gonna be doing like debate streams. That's not really my jam. This format of trying to figure out what's happening is honestly great. It's also nice to have a smaller community instead of being overwhelmed by a stream with thousands of people. The comments go so fast and there's no real space for discussion. Yeah, that's kind of the double-edged sword, is because everybody wants their community to grow, but there's a level at which it becomes so big that it's just chaos. Like I said, I think I maxed out at like 300 viewers during this stream, which is a lot, but it's not so much that you can't have a conversation. Like that's maybe like the sweet spot. Maybe a little bit more than that is a sweet spot. But you know, people like Hassan who have like tens of thousands of people watching, I don't even know how you even keep up with that. Hair Machine, thank you for the 10 pounds. Nice stream, enjoyed, and thanks. I appreciate that. Thank you. Your personality and the big story. Maybe. But yeah, I appreciate everybody checking out the stream and all the kind words. But I guess I'm gonna go ahead and go. I actually have not eaten today, which may sound weird. I woke up at maybe like noon, and then I started like looking into this story, and then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna stream this. So I haven't even eaten, so I'm gonna go do that. And yeah, I'm very pleasant that the conversation was mostly civil, like 99% civil. I saw a couple of people in the chat being a little weird, but it didn't get out of hand. And that's one of the things I love about my community. I've managed against all odds I seem to have put together a generally civil community, which I appreciate. Anyway, thanks you all. It was a fun stream. It's not a fun situation, but it was a very fun stream. Please consider checking out our Discord. I'm sure there's people in the news channel on my Discord talking about this if you'd like to talk about it more. There should be a link in chat, but you can just go to theonejanitor.com/Discord. And I do have a new video coming out. It won't be related to this, but it should be coming out next week, so keep a lookout for that. And I'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye.